All right, Coach Roy, welcome. It's long overdue. It's been about a month since the end of the season, so
Yeah,
happy to have you on.
thank you.
So,
Glad to be here.
Coach, you've coached a lot of different teams, and you've also been a teacher. So, let's go back to your high school days. Did you play many sports in high school?
I played three sports in high school. I went to St. Thomas High School in Bloomfield, Connecticut, and at the time, St. Thomas was an all-boys Catholic school, and we had less than 100 students. And we competed in what in Connecticut was Class S, which was small schools. But because of the size of the state and the number of cities in the state, Class S in Connecticut would be like the equivalent of Division II up here in terms of enrollment of the schools. So we played much bigger schools than we were. But I played soccer in the fall. I'm so old that at that time soccer was not even remotely popular in the United States. The only schools that had soccer didn't have enough kids for a football team. And that's kind of where we were. And then basketball was our primary sport. And I also played baseball
Okay.
for 4 years. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
So was that kind of your introduction to sports, and did that help you learn that you wanted to be a coach at some point?
During my time at St. Thomas, I did. Yeah. It was a unique experience in that uh, our gym there was actually a separate building on campus. We had an actual campus, and everybody, all of us had keys to it. So we would go up there every night. We literally played basketball every night, holidays, weekends, Sundays. We'd finish a soccer game and everybody'd be up at the gym an hour later playing hoops. And what made it really unique was the alumni in the area knew we were playing every night at 7 o'clock, and they would pile in, and we'd have these great pickup games with guys in their 20s, 30s, 40s. And we had a very small gym, kind of similar to Newport, if you've been there, but even smaller, and one of those places where the bleachers go right up to the sideline and they're only like 3 high. So a lot of these guys would come to the games, and you'd be inbound in the ball, and the guy behind you would be going, "For crying out loud, Roy, are you going to push that kid left at some point tonight?" And stuff like that. Or I'd be inbound in the ball, and they'd be going, "Look at Bobby, look at Bobby!" And you'd hear all this behind you during the game. It was a really unique experience and a lot of fun. And pretty special place. I had a great time.
All right. So, do you have any favorite memories that you would like to highlight, or not much?
Well, because of the size of our school, it was a big deal. And we had winning teams every year, but we hadn't won a playoff game in maybe a decade. And it's because of the size of the schools we would draw in the tournament. It would be sort of like, us playing a good Division I program every year in the tournament here. And so my senior year, we kind of made it our team goal. We were going to advance in the tournament. We made it to the quarterfinals and got to play against some kids who I saw play on TV later on, which was really cool. And that was a big thing for us when we won and advanced to the quarterfinals of the tournament. That was a really good goal for us and a nice memory. Mostly though, I remember my friends. From small school like that, everybody plays all three sports. You get to know guys really, really well. And a lot of those guys are still my friends, today.
I feel like that's something we'll come back to later.
Yeah.
So moving on, college-wise, what did you decide on? What did you know you wanted to study?
During high school, one of the things I had a very influential mentor, the Reverend Thomas Campion, rest in peace, who really took me under his wing, both athletically, but he was my English teacher. At the time, I wanted to be a journalism major. I wanted to write. And what he did as our athletic director was in the preseason for soccer and basketball every year, we would go to West Hartford to a place called American School for the Deaf. And we would scrimmage them. They had a full high school with just happened that all the kids were deaf, and we would play them in soccer and basketball, and then afterwards we would have a meal, both teams together, and we'd intersperse between a St. Thomas kid and ASD kid like that. So you got to know, and you sat with the same guys every year. They try to put you with somebody who was in your class. So I made a pretty good friend during that time from there, and I really got a sense of these are just regular guys who are dealing with this disability, and it kind of woke me up to the fact that, you know, there are people that need help and that might be the way to go. So that really influenced me towards a career in special education. And so when I went to go to college, I had several options, but when I graduated from St. Thomas after playing there, Father Campion called me in and he said, look, I know you want to play a little bit, but eventually you're going to coach. And I hadn't really thought about coaching at that time, but he could see right through me, I guess. And he said, JV is going to be open next year. If you go to University of Hartford, which was literally 100 yards from my high school, you'll be able to coach here. I think you should take it. And I'm like, Father, I'll be 18 years old. How am I going to do this? And he goes, I'll be here. I'll help you, whatever. So thought about it a lot because I had some other options and some other schools to go away. And I decided, why don't I give it a shot? So I went to University of Hartford and I coached the JVs and I immediately fell in love with coaching. It was really an interesting experience because a lot of those guys had been my teammates the year before, or I'd played with their older brothers. But I had a great run. My first team was fantastic. We had a great year. They were wonderful kids. And I still hear from a bunch of them way back when. So I coached the JVs all through college. And then when I graduated college, the very next day, they offered me the varsity. So at that point in time, I took the varsity job. I was the youngest head coach in Connecticut, 21 years old. So that got me going. Had a great experience there, but like anything else, sometimes you got to go out in the world and see some other things. You know, I'd been on Bloomfield Avenue for most of my, you know, teen years and through college and everything. So it's time to move on after a couple of years there.
So what happened when you decided to move on? Where'd you go?
I took an assistantship at the United States Coast Guard Academy, which was in New London. In the summers, I worked basketball camps as my summer job. And a lot of them were stay overnight. And that was a blast because when the campers would go to bed, the counselors would all play. So I'd get to play pickup against kids who were on D1 scholarship, D2 scholarship. We had great games and had a lot of fun. And through that, I met the staff at the Coast Guard Academy who would come up to recruit some kids at the camp. And they offered me an assistantship. So I went down to New London for a year. I was teaching in Hartford at the time. So it was a pretty good ride. And at the risk of exaggeration, my car literally had things falling off of it as I was driving down the highway. It was worth about $20 at the time. And I'm going from Hartford to New London, back to Hartford, back home. And it really was a wear out. So I did a year at Coast Guard. It was a wonderful experience, great place, great kids. And I really, between the teaching and the coaching at that point, needed a break. I was fried. So I got out of it for a while and got into retail. But the academy was a wonderful place, and I really push it for kids who are interested in going there. Great place.
What main aspects do you think make it a really great spot?
Well, the academics are so challenging there, and it builds a camaraderie among the cadets. But the younger cadets, the plebes, well, at least at that point when I was down there, are on their guard 24/7 because they're getting demerits for this, that, or the other thing, and the academic pressure, and then playing a sport. It's a real challenge, but the discipline and the way that people treat each other down there was great. And the academy is actually built right off the Thames River, and directly across the river is Electric Boat, where they build the giant nuclear submarines. So as you're walking across campus, you'll see one of these submarines going down the river out towards the ocean, and it's just impressive. And they're directly across the street from Connecticut College, which is another beautiful place right down there. So it was fun. New London was a great place to be for a year or so. I was so busy recruiting and scouting, and I wasn't always at practice. A lot of times I'd get down there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and coach would throw me the keys to one of the academy cars and say, drive up to Bates and scout them. We have them next week, you know, and I'd be on the road up there, then all the way back to New London, then all the way home, and then up at 6 for school. So it was a tough year that way, but it was a great year. A lot of fun.
So a lot of hard work, but a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. So afterwards, what was going on? I know you said you were interested in teaching special education, and you were also interested in coaching. Obviously had a little bit of experience at that point as a young man. So
I was teaching in Hartford, my first teaching job. And it's going to sound hysterical, but I got hired for $11,000 a year, which probably the poverty line right about now in today's world. But it was a very challenging job, and and I don't want to get into details, but it was a very difficult position. I had great kids, but their challenges were amazingly difficult medically and intellectually. And between that and Coast Guard, being exhausted all the time, I needed a break. So I got out of that. My sister lived in Boston at the time. She said, come on up, stay with me, get a part-time job till you figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
So that part-time job led into a 10-year stint in retail management, which I really enjoyed and did very well at. But then I got married and my son was born. And at the time, an 80-hour work week makes it very difficult to be a dad. So I made some phone calls. We had bought a house in Nashua at that point in time. And I made some calls to the Nashua Special Ed Department just to see how I get my certification back.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, I was teaching.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was just good timing. Timing is everything, I guess. So then I got back into it. So that started me coaching in New Hampshire, and a long and rewarding stretch coaching up here.
All right.
Yeah.
So how did being a parent change you, not just like, you said you had to switch and make that change there, but just like the way you thought about the world, or you thought about teaching or coaching, if it did at all?
Well, I really wanted to be able to share some of that if I was going to continue to do that. And I remember a few years ago, there was a former student of mine who I just happened to run into, not from Hopkinton, but from another place. And he's like, oh, my wife is pregnant. I'm going to have my first kid. I don't know what to do. And he had been a big soccer player in high school. So I got a soccer ball for him. I got this, I got that. And I remember saying, what if he wants to play piano? And his answer was, well, then I'll go out and buy a baby grand. And I said, good answer. So I really believe that if my son had not been as interested in basketball as he became, I probably wouldn't have stuck with it as long as I had. It was something we could share together, which was nice. But I volunteered at Nashua when I started teaching there. There was one high school at the time, and the head coach, George Nukas, became a great friend and a great mentor for me. And I was there 5 or 6 years. We had some really good teams. We had a state championship while I was there. Got to see the game at the Division I level. And one of the things I always loved was we would go out of state and play really good programs. We played Brockton, Mass every year. It was known for football, but I had amazing athletes and really good basketball program. We would play some of the best teams from Rhode Island in our Christmas tournament. We'd invite them up, teams from New York City. It was just great to see that kind of talent up close, and really helped our kids realize that they should do some homework sometimes.
Yeah.
But the time in Nashua was well spent. And I left there. I did a year at Daniel Webster College, which is now closed. Not because I went there, but I did a year basically scouting for them. And then the following year, I got hired as an assistant at Rivier College with Dave Morissette, who is currently the St. Thomas Aquinas head coach for boys and athletic director down there. And I got to spend 4 or 5 years with Dave, and actually George Nukas came along. I recruited him to join us and had a really good time coaching at Rivier. We had an amazing group of guys there. Probably in the time I was there, 6 or 7 of them went on to be high school coaches, very successful. And we had a great time. It was a lot of fun to see the game at the college level up close. Then my son became a freshman at Campbell. I didn't want to spend the winter running around college gyms. I wanted to be able to see my son play. And so I took the teaching job over there and ended up being the JV coach for a few years, and then took over the varsity after that.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Very boring too. Switch channels.
Don't do that. That's awesome. Do you feel like getting all these different experiences and being all these different schools, meeting all these different people is more beneficial than it would have been if you had just been in one spot?
That's a really good question. I guess so. Different experiences are great. I mean, through basketball, I don't do a lot of camps anymore, but when I used to lecture at camps, one of the things I would tell the campers was, if basketball is your passion, I can tell you that some of the best friends I've made my entire life have had something to do with the ball. I'd hold the ball up. So I got to meet some incredible people along the way when I was at Riviere. Joanne Merrill was the athletic director there, just an incredible person. And, at every stop, I've just met amazing people, and that's been a lot of fun. I guess somewhat, back in the dinosaur days, when I was in high school, it was not uncommon for one phys ed teacher / athletic director to coach every sport at a high school for like 30 years. One coach, and nowadays that's very, very different. And I think that's probably a better setup the way it is now, because personalities being what they are, if you're a 3-sport athlete and you don't necessarily see eye to eye with the one guy who coaches every sport, that could impact your high school career. Yeah, I think I would say yes. I would say every stop of the way, I met people who helped me be a better person and became friends, and people I could count on. So yeah, I would say every stop has definitely been worthwhile.
So to go back to what you just said, you said, it wasn't uncommon to have a coach coaching 3 varsity sports for 30 years straight.
Oh,
And
yeah.
now it's much more different, where you might have somebody coaching 1 varsity
Right.
sport for 5 years or
Right.
something like that. Why do you think there's been that change?
Well, every generation is different, and there are challenges in coaching high school these days that push people out a little bit. I'm not sure. A couple years ago, I got to go up to the NHIA all-state meeting, and I was part of a group that was recognized for 25 years coaching in the state. And it was very humbling, because the peers I went in with that for that 25 years included Coach Chase, who was amazing, and Jamie Hayes from Newmarket, who's the athletic director now, the longtime basketball coach and a great coach, somebody I really respected. And also Donnie Picard from Berlin, who's a good friend of mine and another great coach, just won his 300th game this year. So these guys were amazing, and I'm looking around going, what am I doing here? How did I get in this group? But the conversation at our table was, they're going to probably get rid of that award because nobody's going to last that long anymore. I think there's challenges involved. I also think, if you take a career in education, there are certain financial realities you got to know about. And there's a lot of pressure. I think the advent of out of school programs, ODP soccer, AAU basketball, the Cannons program, which I'm sure they're all great programs. Yeah. But the advent of that has made parents, I think, more willing to speak up their mind positively or negatively. My dad and I had an agreement when I played high school sports that he could say 2 things to my coaches. Hi, coach. Thank you, coach. But that was the generation and the times, that was it. My dad would have never thought to call a coach and go, how come he's not playing more? His response to me would be, well, you're not working hard enough, make it so he has to play you, that kind of thing. So you don't see a lot of that these days. I will say, though, at Hopkinton here, the parents have been incredibly supportive. I have no complaints. I hear other coaches talk, and I just shake my head. I think some of that is the community and the caliber of people we have here, and some of it is the support I got from Dan Meserve over the years as the AD, just so supportive. I had my back all the time for everything. But I think there's very few young coaches who go into it realizing how to do the job right. And you see a lot of young coaches come in with like in basketball, with an AAU background, but that's all they know. And they don't understand game coaching. They don't understand personalities. They're used to getting 10 good players going to a tournament and just running them out there and beating teams that are worse than them. And they think high school is going to be the same, and it's not, especially at our level. You have to prepare to win at this level. You can't just roll kids out there. So I think it's become challenging. The time is a lot. the pressure a lot. There's a lot more media now than there used to be. So you slip up and say one foolish thing and people, people don't forget,
Right.
that. So, I think it's got to be a labor of love. I'm not sure that, the way things are going in sports now that you're going to see, I don't think you're going to see a lot of the Coach Chases of the world who are, win 300 games in 2 different sports at one school.
Yeah.
I think those days are long gone. So I just see the turnover all over the place,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked about both those styles in great length. Which one do you prefer? Or do you think there's like pros and cons to both styles?
As far as,
Not just only coaches and how long they
Yeah.
stay at a certain spot,
Yeah.
but also parenting and just parents like going
Oh.
and not giving any feedback to nowadays. There's a lot more discussion.
Yeah, again, I want to emphasize, the parents here have been phenomenal.
Mhm.
Okay, I have no gripes whatsoever. And having been a sports parent, when people are upset, I can get it. It's your child, and you want the best for your child. So I understand where they're coming from. I don't know. I think it's a product of the times, I think in education and in coaching, which is education, I think we have to switch with the times. And let's put it this way: the young me who coached at St. Thomas would look at my practice these days and go, "You don't push them at all." But at the time when I first got into coaching, the hot guy was Bobby Knight. You were supposed to break clipboards and yell at officials and make your kids work so hard they're ready to pass out. And we laugh all the time. When I was a kid, you didn't take a water break because you were a wimp. Well, now educationally, we know you better take a water break when you're working out. Yeah. So I mean, things change, and I think things are changing. The one thing I hope doesn't change, and I can see it happening, there's not the feeling of rivalry and tradition that there used to be in high schools. It used to be you'd go to games, you'd see little kids in the stands watching the games, and they'd be saying, "Oh man, when I get to high school, I want number 12 just like him. I want to be him." And or I can't wait to be in high school and play against so and so. A lot of that's going away. I mean, you did all the home games. If we were away, the boys' crowd wasn't as big as it could have been. If we were home and the boys were away, our crowd was pretty small. I mean, we had great parent support, but as far as students, we didn't have a ton of students out there. But the double headers for Kearsarge, the place was rocking. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, those were awesome.
Those games, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed those games a lot.
Yeah,
They were
it was
great.
really great.
All right, so let's dive in a little bit more specifically to Campbell and what
Okay.
you did there, and then
Yeah.
afterwards we'll talk about Hopkinton.
I really had a great time coaching at Campbell. As the JV coach for 4 years, I was coaching with Dan Kesslinger, who's in the NHIA Hall of Fame, and he was a trivia question. He started the athletic and basketball program at Londonderry High when it first opened up, and then he started the program at Campbell. And he was the first basketball coach at both places. He was the athletic director at Campbell, and we had a really good program. We were the only Division III program that had a freshman team, and we still had to cut kids. And it's a school of 450 kids or whatever, and we have all these guys who want to play in our program, and highly successful. We won some ridiculous amount of games in 7 years that I was there, but some of the things we did that I really remember, we were invited and went to the Nashua Chick-fil-A Holiday Festival, which is like, at that time, was the best Christmas tournament in the state. And my kids used to laugh because they'd have a nice magazine program for the tournament. And you'd flip through, you'd see team pictures and information on all the schools. And they'd go like Nashua North, 2,100 kids. Nashua South, 2,000
Yeah.
kids. Thornton Academy, Maine, 1,500 kids. Campbell, 425 kids. But we were very competitive and
Yeah.
we belonged there. We had a great time. In fact, my 2010 team, we had an unbelievable experience. We beat Alvern in the first round, and Alvern and Campbell are like 2 miles apart. In fact, before Campbell opened up, the Litchfield kids went to Alvern. So the two schools know each other. They play Legion baseball together. So, we always had the little brother thing against
Yeah.
Alvin. So we beat Alvin in the first round, and then in the second round, we beat Nashua North badly. And we got to the championship game. It's 3 days in a row. And we ended up playing Thornton Academy from Portland, Maine, who was #1 in Maine at the time. They were 8-0, and they had 2 kids that went on scholarship the next year. And we had a real good game with them, but the whole town came out. I mean, it was an event, and people were so proud of their high school. We were new high school at the time, and those guys were great. We went to Pelham. Sorry, Coach Miller, about the memory here, but we went to Pelham where they had won 53 straight home games. Now, if you think about that, 10 a year, maybe.
Yeah.
So they're in their 6th year of never losing at home.
That's crazy.
And we beat Pelham there. And the great Hopkinton connection to this whole thing is on the front end of that streak. The last team to beat them was Coach Chase and Hopkinton over there.
Wow.
Then they won 53 straight. Then I got them when I was at Campbell. It was great. It was a lot of fun. So the kids accomplished so many things there that were great memories. And the Nashua tournament was so classy for them. I mean, they had people assigned to escort us everywhere we went. The shirts they gave you were high quality stuff. After every game, they had a meal for us right there in the cafeteria. We'd go in and they have Chick-fil-A sponsored, so they do one meal, and we do Louis. They have a pasta meal for us one night. It was first class tournament. It was pretty awesome. So, no, we had a really good run there. I think we had some huge wins over the years, and at the time in Division III, the level of coaching was incredible. And I went up against great coaches just about every night when we were playing in those days, and we had a really good program. In the summertime, we had 3 teams going. The incoming 8th graders would play in the Sports Zone JV high school league. The JV group for the next year would be playing in the Sports Zone varsity league, and then I took what would look like my varsity group and my older kids, and we went and played in something called the BST, which was basically the Division I summer league. So we had teams going, every night of the week. I'm going to a game somewhere, and it was great. I mean, we really built something really, really great there. Enjoyed it.
Something I want to touch on before we move on to Hopkinton is, you were talking about flipping through the program and you see all these schools have like way more kids than you do. So that's obviously a difficult spot to be put in when you don't have as much to pick from.
Right.
However, I feel like having that against you, you're able to, as a coach, kind of figure things out. And when you're put in a difficult position, then you learn a lot about how to succeed versus when you're in an easy position. So do you feel like that situation molded you into a better coach?
Somewhat. You try to improve all the time. And that's one of the things that through the NHBCO, when we would do our clinics in the preseason, there was often a panel for first-year coaches, and they would put experienced coaches on a panel. And I actually ran it for a couple of years. And one of the points I always tried to make with the new coaches was, look, we ask our kids to get better all the time. We need to self-evaluate all the time. Find a mentor, find somebody who knows the game. Have them come to a game. What'd you see? What can I do better? Come to my practice. See how it looks. One of my favorite things is watching other guys run practices. Here, it was like a gold mine for me, because in the fall, I'd be heading out the back driveway here, and I could pull over the side and watch Scott Zipke run a soccer practice, and you might think there's no connection, but there is. I mean, there's conditioning work, there's skill work, there's defense, there's how do you go about your business? How do you handle your team? I will watch Scott run practice all the time. In the spring, I'd be right up on top of the hill watching Dave Chase run baseball practice, which from living it is an incredible baseball practice, So I would learn so much watching, these guys. When I would watch soccer program and the baseball program, the first thing that jumped out at me is nobody's standing around. Everybody's working on something. And that's a very important lesson, because if you're not careful as a high school coach, you can have 5 guys doing something or 10 guys doing something and 6 kids on the side staring at them, so that made me a better coach. But there were people that bounced things off here all the time. It was a great place to coach.
So, getting more into specifically,
Yeah.
you coaching, not just you observing.
Mhm.
Let's talk about like the first year you were here, which team you coached, how the season
Okay.
worked out, and kind of progress through every year.
I thought I was all through coaching when I got here. I was going to teach a few years, and then the wife and I were going to disappear. I kept trying to talk her into going to Hawaii, but she doesn't like to fly,
Yeah.
and so I spent a year or so trying to figure out how can we drive to Hawaii. Didn't work out too well. Yeah. They haven't invented those underwater cars
No.
yet, like a Austin Powers. But so I wasn't going to do much. So Coach Chase, as you know, was the boys coach at the time. He said, "Hey, why don't you just volunteer and help me out?" And we had actually Coach McNicholas was on that team, a very talented team. And I spent a year with those guys, and I enjoyed that time, but I didn't have the same. I had just come from a 365-day a year program where open gym in the fall had 30 kids at it.
Mhm.
So, and then I came here, and I was a little spent, to be honest with you. So, but I enjoyed working with Dave and the kids. And the very next year, the girls' job opened up. But funny how it works out. I wasn't going to apply for the girls' job here.
Okay.
Believe it or not, the John Stark girls' job had opened up, and I went to Mr. Meserve, and I said, "Hey, Dan, I just want to give you a heads up in case you get a call. I'm going to throw my hat in over at John Stark. I think I'm ready to get back in the gym. And, I've had kind of basically 2 years off here, and I'm ready to go now. I'm recharged." And he was like, don't do it. He goes, give me a couple days and let me get back to you. And it turned out that Dave Hughes, who had been coaching the girls before me, his son was coming up, and he wanted to move over and be the JV coach in the boys program so he could coach his son and see his son through the boys program.
Yeah.
If he had stayed with the girls, he would have never got to see Ryan play. So the JVs opened up. Dave went over there, and Dan interviewed me for the girls' job. So I came in and took over the girls' job. It was a little tough with numbers. We were right on the fence of, do we want a JV or not? And we did manage to scrape together a JV team. And during that year, my first season here, I had a death in the family. And I went at the end of the year, I said to Mr. Meserve, I got to step away. I got to get away for a year. I got to be home. And he understood. He was so supportive. It was great. But at the time, the situation here was Mr. Meserve was the high school AD. Coach Chase was the middle school AD. We had two different ADs.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. So Coach Chase said to me, "Hey, why don't you just coach the middle school team? It's like an hour after school, 12 games. It won't feel like a season. You'll be able to get home at a decent time every day." And I said no. But as you know, he's a very persuasive guy.
Yes,
One
he
of my
is.
best friends, a great guy. And he talked me into it. And at the time, Dave Shorey was coaching the boys in the middle school. So I got to travel and spend time with Dave and pick his brain about basketball and other things. And that was a really good experience. And then the following year, Kevin Hill, Coach Hill, who's
Yep.
going to be coaching you guys in baseball this year, had been my JV coach the first year. And he pinch hit and took the varsity for a season for me. And then I came back the next year, and we started on the road to where we are now. It was the year off was tough, but on that middle school team was Katie Meserve, Ellie Owen, Sophie Potter, Fiona Bean, Morgan McGrath, Brooke Carlson, Haley Pesci. I mean, the guts of the 2018 and 2020 Final Four teams. I got to coach in middle school for a year, and it really did help that they knew me. They knew what my expectations were. It really helped us head in the right direction. So it turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. So you have the Final Four hoodie
18.
on there. Yep, 2018.
Yeah, if you guys are out there, Taylor, Abby, and crew, all you guys, you're the ones who started it. No, that was an amazing, amazing group and an amazing year. The year before, Taylor had been sick her junior year. She had been an all-state player her sophomore year, but she had some kind of virus that couldn't get diagnosed. She kept trying to come back to play, made it worse, and she missed 3/4 of that season. Yeah, so we ended up 6-12. She came back at the very end of the year and we won our last 3 games when she was playing. So I got to believe in a normal situation with a healthy Taylor, that team makes the tournament. And, I don't know how deep we would have went, but at the end of that season, the girls on that team that had not qualified for the tournament got together, and that spring we had 13 girls, counting the middle school, who were playing AAU that spring.
Wow.
And they went back the next year in the 7th, and there's no mystery about that. If you look at this year, and you saw them all, I know, Concord Christian and Kona going 1 and 2 all year, 2 best teams clearly, almost their entire programs play in the off season. They're basketball programs and basketball groups. And I'm a multi-sport guy, but it becomes very challenging to beat the top teams when they have such a clear-cut advantage in skill and basketball IQ. I love multi-sport, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're in high school, you should play as much as you possibly can and have a great time. And as a college coach, I loved recruiting multi-sport athletes because I knew they could handle different situations, different coaching styles. But, if you're trying to put a flag up and you got to go through Jaffrey and they got 13 girls on their varsity and they all play AAU and play all year round, it's a little challenging.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But no, that group was really special. Taylor and Abby Houston and Krista Amos were the seniors on that team. They worked so hard. And, a lot of times they say that a team has to take their coach's personality, or does, but I haven't really found that to be true. I believe in high school, I believe a team has their personality shaped a lot by their captains, but also just by the key personalities in that group. And to me, in high school sports, team chemistry is everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. And those guys were great at it. They did a tremendous job as captains of that team.
We talked about that core getting to the Final Four, and then afterwards, you had COVID came up, and as a coach, I mean, you have been coaching for so long, seeing so many different situations, but never anything quite like this.
Not quite like that.
So what was going through your head? How'd you deal with that?
Well, we had real clear discussions and support as boys, and Coach Lignor was coaching the boys at the time, and myself and Mr. Meserve and our staffs. And the directive for all of us was play everybody, because they're giving up their time to wear a mask and play an aerobic sport and no fans and none of that stuff. And so, went into those years, you had to shift your goals as far as wins and losses. They weren't quite as important as trying to make sure everybody got in. And the COVID year in particular, I kept 2 or 3 more than I was told to. I was told to keep 12. I think we had 15. So it got a little tougher to get everybody in. But again, Dan Meserve was great. He went out and got us an extra quarter with some teams because nobody had JV teams at that time. And we'd play a 5th quarter so everybody could get playing time as much as we possibly could. And we played in pretty much a primarily Division II schedule. And it was fun. I mean, we had wins over Stark and Pembroke, and who else did we get? We beat Kearsarge, who was Division II at the time. We had a good run and a reasonable year as far as the wins and losses, but it was really about the experience, making sure we're following the policies, keeping everybody safe, and giving them a chance to play. And then junior year, we still had some of that because, the mask policy was in place to play on the court and all that. So going into this particular last season, coming back, I did say to Mr. Meserve, I really want these seniors to have some really cool experiences to take as memories. So he was really gracious about letting me have a jamboree in the preseason. He worked hard to get the double headers with Kearsarge, which were great memories for the kids to have. I pulled a few strings and got our friend Lance to come out from New Hampshire Sports Page a bunch of times. And this team was on TV a lot. Our first Kearsarge game, we were on YCN Game of the Week. Mm-hmm. We were on, I think it was a DPPG. We were on that 3 times up there. And then, of course, Drew TV. We were on for every home game. Yeah. New Hampshire Sports Page. These kids have a lot of places they can go back and look at themselves playing in high school, which is good for memories. So that was the big goal this year. I wanted to make sure the seniors went out having great memories of playing together and experiencing some cool stuff.
So after COVID,
Yeah.
you had that situation, and then last year losing at Stevens in the first round, then entering this year, you decided to return for one last season.
Yeah.
How did you know it was time that this was going to be the season that you were going to retire?
Well, to be honest with you, I went home and at the end of the previous year, and I was sitting down talking with Nancy, and I said, you know what, hon, I think this is it. And I went in to do my end of the year evaluation with Dan, and I'd already talked to Steve Signor, who was leaving to move to Florida. And Steve had been around the block. It was a great teammate for me. So we talked it out a lot, and I went to Mr. Meserve and I said, Dan, I don't know, man. I just want to give you a heads up. I might not be back. And he told me to just sit on it for a while. The season had just ended, breathe a little, see what you think. So we went home, and my wife said to me one night, she goes, hey, didn't you tell me you had like 8 seniors back? And I said, yeah. And these guys have only played for you in high school, right? And I said, yeah. And you're not going to go back? What are you doing to these kids? So I came in, I said, Dan, I said, I'm back.
You made
the boss made the decision for me, which was great.
And I was fortunate enough to travel with you guys a lot this past season, and didn't win it all, but that was I had a very enjoyable time watching you guys, and I think you definitely made the right choice by coming back.
Thank you. It's funny, people sometimes get I think it's a societal thing, but they look at it and they go, oh, you didn't win the championship, so it wasn't a good experience. But I mean, even in sports where we're historically powerhouses, like say soccer, for certain teams to make the Final Four is a tremendous accomplishment. And that's these guys, you followed us closely. We had injuries, we had illness, we had guys not available. I mean, we played the majority of our games not at full strength. And poor Hannah missed a big chunk of her senior year with an injury, and Sierra got hurt right before the semifinals. It's a tough way to finish up your career. These guys were amazing. They should be really proud of what they accomplished.
So you had a strong season, and then all of a sudden it's like you earned the home game, which weren't fortunate enough to have that last year and had to go play at Stevens.
Right.
So you had that home game in the first round, and you took care of business there,
Right.
and then go on the road to Prospect Mountain in what was just a really fun game.
It was a fun game.
The 4 seed against the 5 seed, and you get the victory and the ticket to the Final Four on your birthday.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That was great.
These guys were great. They treated me so well this year. But it's funny with the tournament, as you talk about every year when this is just me, I guess, but I think other coaches are like this. When the brackets come out, I don't really look at the seedings. I look more at who am I coaching against.
Yeah.
For example, my friend Donnie Picard was a low seed. They had gone to Prospect. I think they were 13. They lost to Prospect in overtime and had a chance to beat them 3 or 4 times there in regulation at the end as a 13 seed. Well, when I looked at my bracket, I thought he could beat Prospect. We might be home for the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
This would be great, but I didn't want to go against him because I knew what a good coach he was. So I look at that, and the irony is at our preseason jamboree, we played Newfound, we played Prospect, and we played Concord Christian. And if the Concord Christian COVID tiebreaker had flipped the other way, we would have had Concord Christian in the semifinals. So we had already seen them, and that laid out pretty nicely for us. I thought we had a really good bracket this year, and the kids took care of business.
So Conant was tough, unfortunate, but they have a really strong program over there, as we all know.
Yeah.
Really great seniors this year, some of the best players in Division III, and unfortunately it came to an end. But that first half, you were down at halftime. I think it was like 36-13. And then in the second half, it looked like a completely different game. You guys played much better. What was said to turn the tide?
Obviously the kids were really down, a little shell shocked when we got into halftime. And having a senior dominant team, there's a certain sense of urgency that, oh my God, this is going to end, So really the message at halftime was, look, if this is it for us, we've had this great run, and if this is it, if it's gonna end right now, let's go out like us. Let's go get them. Let's go press. Let's attack them. Let's do what we do. Let's play like us. I said, I'll open the floodgates and I'll sub a lot, and let's just go after them. And I go, our goal right now, we want to win the second half. That was it. And we did.
You did.
By 8. I mean, we took it to them. Interestingly, at the Division 3 and 4 senior all-star game, we had Emma Tenters with, I was lucky enough to coach Maddie and Elise again on our team. And we had Emma Tenters playing with us. And during the all-star game, I was sitting on the bench and talking to Emma. And she said, yeah, we went into halftime and we were all excited. We're getting another shot at Concord Christian. We're ready, you know. And she said, Coach Troy blew us out of the water. He's like, do you understand this is Hopkinton? They're never going to stop playing for a second. They're going to play right to the end.
You should be proud.
Yeah. So I felt pretty good about that. She also said, I don't understand it, Coach. I never played well in your gym. And I said, oh, you didn't see the guy in the corner. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, we have a guy in the corner with a wire and he moves the rim when you shoot. But no, it was nice. It's nice that at this point, Hopkinton girls basketball is respected and the kids get their due in the off season. I mean, the awards and things like they should.
Credit to you.
And to them. They do the work. So I just enjoy the show.
Yeah. Well, you should be very proud. And then I want to talk about something special that happened after the end of the season. You won the award for Varsity Girls Coach of the Year. So congratulations, Coach. That's well earned.
Yeah. Those are nice. You know, winning those in the past. The nice thing is it's voted by your peers, the guys who understand the time that's involved, the film study, the preparation. So when you get that recognition from your peers, that's a really great thing.
And something I remember like last year, because you told me at the end of last year that you weren't going to be working here anymore and you'd be working elsewhere.
Yeah.
And something that you said to me, I remember, was I was asking you about coaching and about teaching. And you said to me, you know, Drew, you're not gonna, in 20, 30 years down the line, they're not gonna remember what you taught them specifically, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Right.
And I think that's great advice for anybody out there who strives to do anything when leading a younger group of people, whether it's as a teacher or a coach.
Well, it's not, I didn't invent it. Like a lot of things in life, you know, you hitchhike, you borrow, and you tweak to yourself. And I think, you know, it is good advice. And the other piece is, you know, to the kids, I always tell them, find something you love to do and it won't feel like work. And for the majority of my career, teaching and coaching hasn't felt like work.
That's great.
It's where I belong. I actually texted Liz Holmes last week, Air 5, because when I was teaching here and we'd pass in the hallway, we would Air 5 all the time. And you miss little things like that. You know, I miss seeing these guys a lot. They were such a fun group. I enjoyed giving poor Hannah a hard time about the music in practice every day. But I mean, they just came in, they had fun, they worked hard. They got along so well. It was a unique group. They've all been playing together since like second grade. So, you know, they were pretty good chemistry, which is huge in high school sports. You know, you got to believe in each other. You got to trust each other, no matter the sport, you know, and that's a big piece right there.
Sure. Anyway, thank you so much for everything,
My
Coach
pleasure.
Roy. I really appreciate it.
I'll have you out to the house. You can see all my. Wait, before we go, want everybody to see this. Now, Drew told me in the finals last year, every single day of the NBA finals, that the Celtics were going to win. And of course, I disagreed with him and he was wrong and I was right. So I wanted to help guide him down the path to being right more often. So I got him his own official Golden State Warriors winter hat. You can wear the baseball practice when you're outside. So we're going to classy him up.
Oh my God. Thank you, Coach Roy.
Pleasure.